Vroom, vroom, vroom. Welcome to WarThunder in the F8F. One Bravo Bearcat, one of the planes of all time, one of the quote unquote the super props of WarThunder, one of the planes that has historically had some ups and downs, and we are in the uppy times. We're getting the uppies, and we're beyond the downies, because it hasn't been covered yet by, I don't think, any major YouTuber as far as I know. But the F8F did have a fairly recent and fairly significant buff into its basically its ergonomics. Basically, the old F8F flight model, the rudder at high speeds was basically didn't produce lift, would not deflect the nose. Apparently there was a bug report made, and that was changed, and now the F8F rudder is not the best. It's not by any means like an N1K2 rudder where you could be at like 800 kph and just like slam the nose like left and right 45 degrees. But the rudder now is kind of on par with like a P51 D30 or any of the P51 series, and it brings the realism of the plane back into line with kind of like all of the other things that are in the game, which I think is a pretty good thing. I also think it's a pretty good thing to cover this plane because in sim battles, this 6.3 BR is kind of rough. It kind of sucks, especially on non-event times, because you get so many JU288, you get so many people that are just grinding and just kind of like using the game as a means to an end, that you really don't get a lot of interesting fights. But during event times, because the population picks up, sometimes you can find a good game. So usually on weekends, 6.3 top BR, even up to 6.7 BR. Sometimes you can find games, and sometimes you get some interesting fights. The other thing about the plane is it's just kind of outshined by the fact that the F4B exists and is at basically 2 steps lower BR and does kind of everything, not better, but it's just as good, performance-wise is just as good, ergonomically better, and ends up doing basically all of the same things, but at a BR that's much, much more friendly and much more easy to find games, because at 5.7 it's kind of like that top end where the prop population sits at about 6.0 and below, 5.7 even more so, because nobody really likes dealing with JU288s. Even if I go in and I slam 10 of them in a row, after about slamming the 10th one in a row, I kind of want to just run full tilt into a wall IRL and smash my head against it, because in reality it's just one of those game mechanics that isn't really all that fun, is dealing with super duper fast tanky bomber that has good gunners that hit you in the wing one time and you're like, well, I'm going to go back to base and rearm, and also just shooting at guys that can't really like put up an interesting fight. Just like it just isn't fun. It like really detracts from the game mode. Now, fortunately, I was lucky enough to get a couple of good games in the F8F, and really it kind of build up some familiarity with this aircraft, because in the game, one of the reasons it's outshined by the F4U4B is not just because of the BR, it's also just because of the flight model. The flight model on the F8F is a little bit weird. It's kind of very unique in the sense that you have very good climb rate at low altitudes, then it really tapers off probably above 3,000 meters. You have extremely good acceleration, especially for a prop. And then your turn performance, though, is a little bit odd. And it's a little bit odd because your sustained turn is a little bit worse than the F4U4B, and your energy retention is horrible. This plane has probably one of the worst bleed rates in the game as far as initial turn goes, which means that if you find yourself in a protracted turn fight in this thing, it's really easy to end up very, very slow. But at the same time, the acceleration and the top speed, you can use that to offset it where it's not that big of a deal. The other thing that people have a problem with the plane is like the wing stalls on it are pretty, it can be pretty harsh. It's really easy to get a little bit too greedy with a shot, pull too hard, and then put yourself into a flat spin, and then you have to get yourself out of it, and you're like, oh no, that's not really good. Now, fortunately, because I spent a good bit of time and I have way too much time in the game, I didn't really have that problem. So I was able to get basically the most that I could out of it. And at this tier, if you play the plane strictly as a high-speed hit-and-run plane at 3,000 meters and below, you can be kind of untouchable. it's also that's also true of like any plane that's at the highest performance for top speed. It's BR, so it's not really to me it's not all that interesting. What I do find interesting is kind of using the maneuverability of the plane and kind of taking advantage of it and going up against like the I got a couple guys on the other team on that's in like a Key 84 and a Yak 3, and both of those planes maneuverability wise are very competitive. They're technically slightly better, and the way that they have to win though is they really have to be aware that your energy retention, if you use it correctly, can be kind of a double-edged sword. The F8F, even though it has no energy retention, it does have a pretty low stall speed, especially with the flaps out. It has a gigantic motor, so even though you think that you ran out of energy, it really doesn't need a lot of energy to keep pointing at you. And then it has these, the A&M 320 mils are kind of by far the best guns as far as prop tier is concerned. With that being said, although you can maneuver with about one opponent, trying to juggle two can be a little bit rough. Getting caught into the vertical part where, yeah, you're going slow, you're pointing at one guy, the other guy is really easily able to come and see that your plane is basically at a standstill and get away with that. The other thing that's been changed about this plane too over probably the last year or so is the engine overheating is not nearly as bad as it used to be. It's plenty manageable, like it works. The settings that I'm running right now is I'm using manual engine control that I actually mapped the gear switching thing because I wanted to experiment with it. And this is one of those planes that you don't really need to know too much about the gear switching because the supercharger gear switch is basically like 500 meters above ground level, so you could, in all honesty, just run, the second gear or the second speed, and then run like 85 to 90% prop pitch, reduce prop pitch when you start to overheat, and just kind of play it by ear. Like I don't have like a master list of mech settings where I'm like, okay, I'm at this altitude, I gotta like plug in this value and that value to make my speed 3 kph fast. It's like, nah, I look at the engine temperature and I go, I'll cut them down to, not explode. But the other kind of issue with this tier 2 is it's a really strong plane, especially if you play directly to the strengths. The other issue is like the Axis side of this matchmaker is kind of like rather limited as far as plane performance goes, because the K84 is a really, really strong 5.0. But the thing is, there's other K84s that move up to 6.3, and really the only thing that's changed is the armament. The German tech tree kind of has a little bit of a similar issue where the best performing 109 is the K4, or at least speed-wise is the one that's almost like a super prop. Has a really good engine setting, and it is competitive at 5.7, and it's actually a pretty good matchup for this thing too, I think, overall, just because of the way that speed with altitude scales. Like the F8 with altitude, the amount of engine power that it loses is much, much worse than something like the F4U4B, or pretty much any other plane. So there are ways to fight this thing, but because the German lineup isn't really like fully like fleshed out at higher tiers, you have the TA152H, which is another one of those planes I think fits in the same boat as this, where it's good, and what I like about it is the way that it gets there is really interesting. Like it's kind of the opposite of this, where the F8 is all engine power and no energy retention. The 152H is all energy retention and not a lot of engine power. But it also means that the Axis side kind of has either planes are just straight downgrades to what they already have, or they're just kind of like quirky off-flight models, which means that kind of getting full games up at this tier it can be kind of rough. Another issue here is like you have other super props in the game, like the Yak 3U I think stands out at 6.0 to me. Is like that plane is just this plane, but basically better in a way that's more intuitive in pretty much every meaningful way. Yes, the Yak 3U does dive slower, and the guns are technically slower and whatnot, but the Yak 3U, if you want to just like step into a 6.0 plane and just like kind of like turn in one direction and win, it's a really, really good plane. But it's kind of neither here nor there. It is what it is. I do wish that in the future Gaijin maybe adds a little bit more kind of higher engine powered planes for the Axis side, because there's a couple different versions of theoretical improvements that could be added to like a higher manifold pressure FW190 like an A9. Wouldn't be a super prop, by the way, but a 2,000 horsepower 190A would be a reasonably good 5.3 plane, and you'd have a 190A model with like, you know, something of a climb rate. It'd be cool. Same thing with some of the Italian planes, like the RE2005 in sim is at 5.3, and it's running its first iteration kind of manifold pressure setting, when that plane had at least one version later in the war where the Germans basically replaced the engine with one of their engines and then upped the manifold pressure to like the 109 G6 level. So there is kind of a reasonable expectation to add like the RE2005 or RE2006, where you basically have just a 2005 flight model with more engine power that would bring it kind of on par with being slightly inferior to something like a Spitfire LF Mark 9, or a little bit kind of like a halfway in between point of like an LF Mark 9 and a Griffin Spitfire. That's something I think that's reasonable, but also because we're 10 years into the game's development cycle, and jet tier brain rot is the name of the game. I don't think it's going to happen. I also don't think adding those planes really opens the door up to like add, you know, more American super props, like the very, very late war P-72 replacement for the P-47 variants, like all the super duper props. I don't think they need to add those, but I do wish this tier was more popular, because I do enjoy the fights, and I do enjoy like all the performance that we have, because it's an interesting dynamic, and it does make props a little bit more fun if you're not, you know, stuck in something that's tops out at like 450 kph, and you can, you know, get to the fights quicker. With that being said, I'll just kind of go over a little bit of what I do in the F8F, and usually what I do is, yes, I do hit and run quite a bit, but in the maneuvers, I'm really trying to take advantage of an initial turn and a good entry, and then using the fact that I go super slow and then can accelerate super fast as a means to kind of fight my opponents. It's viable, it works just fine. There are limitations to it, though. If you do run into someone who understands energy management, positioning, angles and turn rates, and how to utilize your energy retention against you, a lot of planes can really kind of kick your shit in. Something like the K-84 and the Yak-3U are purely, in terms of turn performance and maneuverability, just better than this as far as kind of overall performance. A prolonged dogfight is not something you really want to be stuck in with this thing, and being stuck flat on the deck in a flat turn with no room to dive out can be a rough spot. At the same time, if people don't understand that, and a lot of people in sim kind of like have like a baseline understanding, but probably not to the extent that I do, because I know life of the game, you can make it work, and it's actually really fun to make it work, which is what I'm doing here. This guy came in with the LA7, and I was able to kind of gain an advantage on him through a couple of different turns. And as the game has kind of gone on, things have, like, the number of players is reducing, so I can get more kind of like pure 1 versus 1 engagements, and actually have the luxury of talking about it. This guy in the K-84, like this turn that he does here, he kind of just goes in front of me, and I'm anticipating the guy that's up high diving down to me, so I'm just gonna I'm gonna run away, because that's what the plane is good at. If the K-84 was alone by himself, I would have took the fight, would have stuck it, and tried to win it. But I'm just gonna end up running away, and that's one of the things the plane is really good at. Legitimately, at low altitude, it is the fastest non-turbine engine prop in the game, technically. Although I think the 4B, its top speed is basically the same. I think the P-51H's top speed might be basically the same. Although the 51H actually at low altitude might be a little bit faster, but I really don't. It doesn't really matter that much, because I mean these planes are always on the same team. So it doesn't matter. So I'm trying to run these guys out, trying to get away, and eventually I'm going to get bored. I'm going to turn around, I'm going to try to fight one of them, because I figure, well, the second guy probably broke off, right? You'd think that he might have went for other targets, and I'll take my chance, win the first 1v1, and then go provoke a second one, because that's more interesting than just like vroom 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 vroom. But we are doing the vroom 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 and going the fuck away. And as long as I'm at this low altitude, I'll be fine. At higher altitudes, once you get above 3,000, there are planes that can run you down. Like the 109K4 above 3,000, I think, is actually faster than the F8F. I haven't done the testing in a while, so I'm not sure. But even in this dive, like the K84 that's behind me, he's actually cutting off my path as I'm doing these turns, and the dive performance of the K84 is actually like pretty darn good. It's one of the better accelerating planes in a dive, and has technically, if it didn't rip its wings, it'd have a really, really high dive speed. So it's a deceptively strong plane. But instead of just trying to run away from the K84 forever, I'm gonna turn around and try to fight him. Now on kind of my first turn here, I will slow down a little bit. I'm gonna pull hard just to create like a harsh angle for him to try to pull into, and now I'm already doing 300 kph. And it's not actually K84, it's the Yak 3. I think this is the VK 107. And as I go up, this is what I said earlier, yes, I can take advantage of the turn rate of the plane, or the turn radius of the plane, and then you get slow, you get vertical, and then the second guy comes and shoots you out of the sky. Now, thankfully, because I'm a real try-hard cookie, and even though I'm missing a wing, I'm still going to point the nose down, and I'm going to end up running away again. I'm actually going to be able to take this thing all the way back to the base. And this is like one of those weird kind of WarThunderisms where the visual models are supposed to be approximations of like the damage models, but sometimes they don't really match up, and they're because it's a disguised hit point system. In real life, that you probably wouldn't have like lost the wing, but your right wing would look like fucking Swiss cheese. But WarThunder does this thing with the damage models where it's like blowing the guy's wingtip off is more visually impressive than turning the plane into, you know, putting a bunch of little holes and some medium-sized holes in it. So, whatever. Is this realistic? No, I don't think an F8F is making it back to, you know, base in its in the Battle of Stalingrad with one wing and half of a tail. But you know, we take what we can get because we're just based like that. But anyways, as this game goes on, because we're doing it, like look at the scoreboard. It's literally just me and an attacker versus everyone else. It's kind of one of the big my big pet peeves with Sim is like it's really hard to keep a game going for a long time and have it actually be considered good. But we come in, we're gonna go with the K84. He's doing this downwards turn. He actually just kind of gives up position here, like. These guys that play K84 a lot, because the K84 does turn well and you do win most of your fights pretty effortlessly. A lot of these guys just don't understand really anything when it comes to positioning for trajectories or using energy or anything like that. We go down and we're going to come back up. And one of the most effective tactics to use against the F8F for most players is to bait them into a vertical, because a lot of times players will get greedy. They'll overpull because they see the guy like he's getting in the sights, he's almost there. He's like, I'll just a little more, and then blam, wing stall, flat spin, and then the other guy kind of gets a free kill. At the same time with the F8F, on my turns, I'm not immediately pulling as hard as I can. Sometimes I'll conserve energy on going down with the anticipation that on the upwards cycle, I'm going to need that speed to get closer. If a guy is not in a threatening position, I don't really have to turn all that hard. The same thing, it comes in here, and this is where the railguns come into. Like, the one thing that's like super duper redeeming and kind of probably frustrating for everyone about this plane when fighting it is the ANM3s just obliterate everything, and you have infinity +1 ammo. So it's kind of like horrible. And come in, he comes below us, and he's got good position here. He can shoot there, but now I'm going to go up. I'm going to use the flaps. I'm going to cut the radius, and now because his turn circle is a little bit bigger, I actually get inside of him, and now I have the offensive advantage. And at this point, if he conserves energy and he maintains his turn rate just outside of my guns, doesn't go below me like right here, he could get back into an offensive position. But because I've put myself into a spot to threaten him, he reacts to the threat, and he reacts the wrong way, and we're just going to go down in and behind him. Now, as he goes up, I'm going to play to the inside of his wing, so look at his left wingtip. I'm anticipating him going to the left, and I'm trying to position my plane to cut him off, and it looks like it transitions to the right for a second, and now I go to the outside, and I'm going to go to the inside again, and this is where I'm going to pull, I'm going to shoot, and he explodes. He's dead. He's been obliterated. Now, props to this guy. Get it? Props. We're in props. He actually stuck around. Like usually most guys, they die 3 times and they're like, I don't want to play anymore. This isn't fun when I'm not winning. Realism is when I win, and the more I win, the more real it is. comes in. This is another bad merge. He tries to use energy. It's just kind of a Syrian lead turn. And we're going to go up. I'm going to go up on the outside of his wing, though, this time, because I want to get to the higher part of my circle so that then I can drop in here. Just because, like, I know that I'm playing against the energy retention of the planes. I'm always anticipating that. That right there, that shot that you might have seen, that's one of those spots where people get really greedy and they'll pull really hard and then the wing stalls, and then you lose all of the good position that you have. Coming in here, as far as the flaps go too, one thing I forgot to mention is the flaps, they are non-rippable. They're basically automatic. You can technically deploy landings right away and they will automatically deploy, but flaps don't increase your turn rate. They decrease the turn radius. They do increase the turn rate temporarily, but you are sacrificing energy to use them, so you have to be kind of selective in how you want to use them. I'm going to go up here. I'm going to go to his right, and I'm anticipating him coming up to my guns, because if he goes down and to the left, I'll still have a position advantage, and then I just cut down to the left and be able to get behind him again. He comes up into the guns, we get him again, and that's going to be really kind of game over for him. It's going to be game over for us too. The tickets are gone. Enemy teams are winning, even though we're, one guy's bombing in the A-26. And overall it works out. The overall kind of conclusion with F8F is I want to play it more. I really like the plane. I might try out the machine gun one at some point. The downside though is the event's over. New patch is going to drop. It doesn't look like it's going to be super duper exciting. Doesn't look like it's really going to bring a lot of new people into Sim, especially definitely not this BR, because that's not what people are interested in. But this is definitely, it's definitely one of the planes of all time. It's definitely a plane that I like. I think it's neat. I like the way that it's good, but it's not so good that it's impossible for other people to play against, unless you obviously just do 650 kph on the deck the whole time and don't turn with anyone, and me and my 6 best friends are all together in them. Then I don't know. Then you don't really get a fight it. But that's kind of that's the name of the game too. Like there's some planes that if you do play strictly to not die, you can play the game to strictly not die. But we don't do that here. We try to mix it up just a little bit. Anyways, we're going to go back to the runway here. We're going to land, and the game is going to end. We're going to get some rewards, and that's going to be all for a Bear Thunder.